So, what's the plan? Anybody, anything urgent? Anything anybody would like to talk about? I mean, is there something on someone's mind?
Deborah, you can unmute yourself and you're first. And then anyone else, please either email me a question in chat or you can raise your hand or unmute. Thank you.
Go on, Deborah, talk to me. So we think we motivate. Here we are for maybe 40 minutes, 50 minutes. I'm a bit slow today. We're going to discuss and think about and analyze using Buddha's views about reality and how to get some tricks to lead our lives. So Deborah, what's the story?
Yeah. Good morning. Well, it's actually, I just wanted to know if you could talk about blame. For example, I have struggled with that for some reason. When I feel sensitive or guilt is being put on me that is not true, I tend to, instead of focusing on myself, I tend to sort of dash out to blame who's ever with me to fill that void, that not handling what's been done to me.
Okay, so let's use the Buddhist analysis as always, Deborah. So basically, it comes down to the same thing for all of us, and it's so boring because I repeat it all the time. But basically, you're like the rest of us, darling girl, and you've got this bottomless pit of hungry need to be seen as a good girl and liked and stroked and praised and loved. Do you recognize that? Well, you're like everybody else. It's actually the most primordial attachment. And so, of course, when it doesn't happen, what do you think arises? You know, you're calling all these different words, but basically it's called anger. So and then you get angry. Naturally, this is the Buddhist analysis is almost too simple. We kind of make it so complicated in the West. We use all these different words. But basically what drives the show is this deepest primordial hunger, you know, this neediness for something out there, or mainly the deepest one, which is hardest to see, is that this is what attachment is. It's this need to always get the nice things, and especially always to be treated nicely and smiled at and praised and liked. I mean, do you understand? It's so simple, isn't it? So the second we don't get it, then what arises is called aversion. And if you're a very volatile person, you'll shout and yell and scream. Or if you're not so volatile, it might just come out as all kind of hurt inside. And then you blame, and blame is a function of anger. Well, darling girl, that's the analysis, but it's just a question of seeing it every day and catching our body out of speech before we vomit out, and then catching our mind. It's just hard work. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you.
But I mean, it's a question of, you know, the first thing is, the first practice, you know, is to at least don't lash out and hurt the other person. I mean, do you do that, or do you keep it keep it inside?
Both.
Okay, so that's the first practice. And this is already tremendously difficult. We haven't even accomplished this, even if we've been practicing for 50 years. The first level of practice is to at least control the body, you know, don't punch, or the mouth. I mean, the mouth is a favorite one for us. So we lash out with the words because we don't catch our mind. It's so instantaneous, isn't it? The second that thing happens, then the unhappiness rises up. This attachment doesn't get what it wants. So aversion arises, and then all the stories in the mind, then out come the mouth, you know? So at least at least refrain from that if you can. But then the real work starts by hearing all the stories in your mind that end up, I mean, do you go on for days, or are you able to cut it after a while, or does it sit there festering? What kind of person are you?
No, it's in the moment, and then if my blame doesn't work, I tend to.
If you what?
If my blame doesn't give me what I want.
If you're what? Sorry, darling, I don't understand. I want to understand.
If blaming, if my.
So you mean the story in your mind?
Oh, the story in my mind.
You say blaming means it's something in your mind, or you're saying it to the person.
I'm saying it to the person because I want that person to sort of fix what is painful. And
so you say something to the person. When you say blame, you mean saying something to the person.
Yes.
So you mean you shouldn't have said that, it's not true, or you are horrible. What do you mean by blame? I mean, blame means
for example, if Okay, I'll be right to the point. Like my mother tends to manipulate, so she will leave me with the guilt, and then
Okay, I understand now. Your mum. Okay, mums are it goes way back with our mums. So, darling girl, so what do you mean? So she'll say, you don't ring me enough or something.
well, she'll say like you don't care or something
Oh,
like
okay,
that.
that's fairly normal. Okay, but so, okay. When is your mum? Okay, darling girl, when is your mum? It's a whole nother kettle of fish. Come on. I mean, so, okay.
No, but Robina, so then my mom is far away. She's in another country. And so then when I hang up the phone, she leaves me with all her negative emotions. I carry them. And then
no, she doesn't. No. First of all, that's a mistake. She doesn't, she does what she does, but you do what you do. So the very first thing, and this is a minefield for most of us. I mean, the words you're describing, you say, she leaves me with all this emotional, she leaves me with guilt. She just said what she said. That's her problem. Now we've got to look at your problem. And then what happens is, because you've got this, little needy Deborah, and join the universe, honey. We're all, especially with our mums, when we're 97, it's still the same, unless we've worked on our mind. So there's this deep little Deborah since she's born, yearning and craving for mummy to love her. So then your mummy, being a typical neurotic person like the rest of us, join the universe, she's also got attachment, and she's also got anger, and she's also got hurt. So since your little girl, when she wasn't feeling happy, because maybe your father was mean to her, then she lashes out at you. So Deborah's developed this habit of, being ready for mummy to say these mean words. So the second mummy says mean words, little Deborah feels unloved. So then your anger arises, and then you hang up the phone, and then you sit there going on about it. I mean, this is join the universe, honey. So that we have to unpack all this. And so if if you like Buddhism, the Buddhist analysis is the deepest one, is the source of all this. The source of it all is this emotional hunger. It's called attachment. And the neediest, the deepest one, not just for sex and drugs and rock and roll, but the deepest one, especially with your mum, is to be loved and approved of all the time. I mean, do you understand my point? And the minute your mummy says these words, then you fall into your old habit, and then you then get guilty, but that's yours. Guilt is yours. Blame is yours. The attachment is yours. So the first thing it's important to kind of get the distinction between her and you. So she just does what she does. I mean, she's no doubt she's old, because she's whatever. So she hasn't worked on her mind, no doubt, and she's got all these expectations from you. So she feels unloved by you because her attachment's not getting what it wants, and so we keep feeding into each other's nonsense, darling. Okay. I mean, this is the analysis we just have to learn. You've got to start distinguishing between yourself and your mother. What's your mother and what's yours? Yours is your guilt, your attachment, your blame, your anger. She doesn't leave you with anything. You have to decide. And that's the hard work. This is the hard work, Deborah.
Okay, and so then what happens is, after all that you've talked about, I got that. Then, since I'm with my husband and I need that attention, and I don't get it, then I blame.
Same thing. It's exactly the same thing as with your mum. What's the difference? You see, it's so deep, this attachment. It's there every second, Deborah. It's not just that it pops up occasionally, it's there all the time, and it determines how we always. And this is the thing, the suffering of this attachment for someone else to like us is called dissatisfaction. We are always dissatisfied, Deborah. This is the deepest, most energetic level of attachment. And as Lama Zopa says, Lama Yeshe too, this is the main suffering in the West. We have this terrible dissatisfaction, and it's dissatisfaction not just with what you've got, but with who you are. We've got to ask the question, why do you need attention from your husband? Think about that simple question. Why do you need attention from your husband? Because you don't think that you are enough. That's the sadness of the deepest level of this attachment. It seems almost too simple, but everybody in the universe, this is how we are. This is Buddha's analysis of us. So we don't feel we're enough, Deborah. So you've got to start making yourself whole, and stop relying on your husband to make you think you're a good person. Stop relying on your poor old mum, for God Almighty's sake. I mean, are you hearing me? This is the basis of daily practice, Deborah, and it's really not easy because it's so automatic. In other words, attachment, the Buddha would say attachment is the main source of all suffering on this planet. Now, when you say that to a normal person or a psychologist or a neuroscientist, they would laugh at you because it just sounds so ridiculous. But you've got to study what the Buddha means by that. He's not just joking if he says that. He's meaning, so attachment is the deepest voice of this primordial sense of a separate me, this ego. And so we've all got it. It's ants and dogs and monkeys as well. It's the cause of all suffering. And it's, in other words, attachment, this neediness, this dissatisfaction, this always wanting something more. And then, of course, on the grosser level, it goes to sex and drugs and rock and roll. But the deepest one is how we're seen by others. It's a symptom of a really suffering person, and that's what Buddha's basically saying. But I'm saying it in a modern way. He doesn't say it like I'm saying it. So attachment is our deepest pain, our deepest suffering, and it's primordial, and it takes time to see it. So this is why we get unhappy. It's why we blame. It's why we get guilty. It's why we get angry. It's why we feel isolated. It's why we feel lonely. I mean, does it make sense?
Thank you. Yes.
One step at a time, baby. But the first one is at least control the servants of your attachment and your anger, which is your speech. Okay. Zip your lip. And then and then go and have your little weep in your room and then think it through and make some decisions.
Okay.
We've got to be our own therapist, talk to ourselves. But we've got to understand this analysis. It takes time to understand it, This means we've got to read the books and think about it and do a bit of practice every day. Do you understand?
Thank you, Venerable Robina.
Good,
yes.
Good. Okay. But join the universe, honey. You're just the same as the rest of us. Variation of a theme, that's all.
That's
what
good.
else? Is there anything else there, man? Who's got
the... we have Ace, Hillary, Beth, and then Barbara.
Go on then, Hillary. You talk to me. Where I can't see Hillary.
Yes.
There you are. Hi, sweetheart. Talk to me.
Robina, good morning. Thank you for being here. I don't have a problem so much as an observation that I would like to ask you about.
Yes.
I've been practicing for many years, and during the pandemic, I've found myself, actually having more intense practice because, less distractions. So around Christmas, I went through a depression that I decided to use as an object of meditation. Yes. And it was amazing. And it sort of, when I came out of it very quickly and with a lot of, just somehow some new eyes. And so what I'm experiencing now is that, I've really been working with my mind. And when I go through my day, I find myself sort of seeing through two lenses, like I'm in the situation with everybody else, like if I'm at the store or whatever. And I'm seeing everything going on. And then there's the other side that's, where I'm seeing through the dramas, if I go to a store and there's a long line and I go, and then I see everyone complaining and I think about, I need to practice patience. It's always like this dual lane kind of thing.
But that sounds like you're practicing. I mean, you're developing you're developing the Buddhist analysis of the world instead of the samsaric analysis. And that's called practice. That's wonderful. So what's the question about that?
That's actually the answer. I was just wondering.
I mean, it's like the default view, we're born completely programmed, isn't it? If taking the Buddha's view, we've got countless past lives and we are programmed so completely, so totally with the samsaric philosophical view of the universe, the self-pity me, it's not fair, attachment, anger, jealousy, how dare you do that to me, I didn't ask to get born. Have a look at the philosophy in our mind, but it's utterly automatic. We call it normal because we're programmed in it. So now here we are trying to be a Buddhist, and we study the Buddhists, we listen to Buddhism, we listen to the teachings, and so we've got this other analysis that we're trying to use to take place, to replace the samsaric one. And when we're fully developed, of course, the view will be the totally the Buddhist one. So we'll be blissful and clear and wise and patient and loving and no attachment and no anger, because we've completely done the job of reprogramming our mind. So it seems to me you're doing well. That's called practice.
It's new for me, so I just wanted to.
You said you've been practicing for years.
I have. Well, this is for some reason, a new level, like some.
Now you're beginning to practice.
I guess so.
It's the beginning of practice. When you start to change your mind, honey.
Yes.
So well done. It shows how it takes time, doesn't it?
It does.
Well done. Good on you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay then, Beth, you talk to me.
what does the opposite of attachment? So I have a friend that's a psychologist, and it's funny because we can kind of joke about different stuff because she's not like my therapist. So we have a fun time interacting. Sure. She had pointed out a few months ago, like, oh, do you know that you have all the conditions of Asperger's? And I just kind of thought it was funny in a way, but I noticed over the years of like looking at how much attachment has run over stuff, but I've noticed that I've been, I don't want to say almost more of a loner, but I'm like, I noticed that, wait, I don't need to keep on looking for all this validation. And I want to have more time practicing because in the long run, that's what's going to be more helpful. But is there like a balance of spending time alone because you want to work on yourself, because you want to be a benefit? And like, am I just being a loner, spending more time on myself?
This is what is, for me, in my opinion, just hearing you talk, this is for me, you're joking, so-called joking, but she's meaning it, that you got signs of, you got indications of Asperger's. This actually, it should be, from the Buddhist perspective, I would suggest that that's praise. Honestly, but I mean, it sounds quite shocking to say that, because I think that the materialist views of the mind are based upon all of us being normal, fragile, needy little people who need to be socialized and who become proper people by being socialized and loved and nurtured by others. So, I mean, I think it's the faulty starting point. It's outrageous. So if you actually dare, I mean, if you forget about you being Asperger's, can you imagine how, from the materialist point of view, psychological point of view, how they describe someone like Geshe Lama Konchog, who's living naked in the mountains 24 hours a day practicing? They would call him the outer edge of the most insane autistic Asperger's you could ever find in the universe. We can't fit a person like that because we haven't got a clue in hell what he's doing. So, honey child, you should say, thank you. I'm honored that you praised me like this. So, okay, if the point is this, so the danger can be if we are content in our own company and want to practice and aren't craving all the time for people to love us and praise us, it could also end up being, you could be, just uncaring. That's when it's a problem. If you have compassion and you have empathy for others, that's the direction it should go in. If being on our own just becomes utterly self-centered and becomes not caring, that's a problem. That's often can be a misconception. But if you're not caring about whether people love you or not, and you're able to nourish yourself, and that you have empathy for others and have compassion, honey child, you are on the right track.
I would say, maybe if this is helpful, if I'm kind of doing this right, is I think of the more time I spend doing practice, I think of it as like, I'm spending time trying to develop as many skills to be helpful, and not a lot of other people are.
Honey, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. You've got the right view. That's what a person is in meditation. That's what Geshe Lama Konchog for years. He's in there literally becoming a Buddha so he can then bop around the universe helping others. But there's no view like this in our culture. We don't have a view like this. So it can easily be misinterpreted. So it sounds to me you're on the right track. If you say words like that, you are on the right track, honey. But this is really shows for me for example, there's a friend of mine, I always quote this, she's a Buddhist and she's a student of the Lamas, and I've known her for years, and she has a little boy who was like 2 or 3. He showed all the symptoms of a really kind of out of control, berserk kid, was like autistic, whatever you want to call. And she was worried. I said, for God Almighty's sake, talk to Lama Zopa, and check it out. Well, he can see who he is, and it gives him all these practices to do. He's an astonishing little boy. But the interesting point was, I said, why don't you write to the Tibetan doctors? I mean, these doctors are like lamas, and they can see your mind and they understand. So she sent a letter to this and a photo of the boy to this Tibetan doctor. And he wrote back and said, yep, and a couple of symptoms. And he said, yes, that's how yogis behave. He's a little reincarnated yogi. So, I mean, because if you're a reincarnated yogi, you have no attachment, no ego grasping. You don't show the symptoms of an ordinary needy little child who will burst into tears when they don't get what they want. You're completely different. So we don't have any way of assessing this in our culture. I mean, in my opinion, it's quite dangerous. Are we communicating? Good. So be careful, Anyway, that's my comment. What else, people? Who else is there, Mary?
Ace has a question, and Barbara Burkhardt.
Okay. What's your question, Ace? Hello there. Happy to hear you.
Hello, Robina. Nice to see you again.
Good, yes.
So I just understand in my life, I am an introspective person, which means if I have a small problem, I try to exaggerate it, and I become so focused on that problem 100%. So the
I
question,
understand that. So what's the question then, Ace?
the question is, how
Yeah.
can you give us, please, skills or talk about the art of letting go, please?
I don't use that word much. It's too cosmic, you know. It's used in such a hippie way. It's a slow, gradual process of looking at your mind, understanding how we cling to things, as you said very nicely. That's called attachment, and attachment exaggerates, like you talked the last time you talked about when someone smiled at you. So then you grab hold of that, and the attachment in you exaggerates it, holds on to it, thinks about it all the time. So it's learning to recognize that, and learning to reprogram your mind. It's like you see it, learning to notice it and tell yourself to shut up, tell yourself to think something different. It's learning. It's a slow, gradual process, Ace. And so that's why if you like the Buddhist approach, as you've been suggesting that you do, then you just simply, I think you get the skill just by reading some of the good teachings, and you get some ideas from it, then you apply it. It's a slow, organic, one day at a time level of practice, Ace. So just keep moving, doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Right. Appreciate it.
Who else was there? Mary, did you say someone? Yes, who was there? Barbara, yes, talk to me, sweetheart.
Hi, Venerable Robina, yes. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Since I've been practicing, I have noticed that I have an okayness with things that at one point in time would like upend me.
Yes.
And I guess my question is, I wonder sometimes if I'm tipping into indifference.
That's a danger. It can be, but
I don't know if part of me thinks that this is a new way of thinking for me. And I'm just getting used to being okay with things that at one point in time would have offended me.
Now, give an example. So let's just say you look you read the latest daily news, and you see the latest suffering in between the Israelis and the Palestinians. And whereas once before you'd feel like suffering and pain and get angry, and now you don't care. That's indifference. That's indifference. When it comes to beings, that's indifference. But if it comes to the things not being the way you like them, but now you're more flexible, that's practice. Because practice should bring less neurotic, less angry, more empathy. If it becomes indifferent, you're going in the wrong direction. This is one of the big dangers. We can misunderstand renunciation. Oh, I don't. Would you like some tea, Robina? No, I don't care. Would you like some coffee? No, I don't care. I'm renounced. It's rubbish. That's indifference, and you become self-centered. So if you're giving up attachment causes you to be more patient, because putting up with something that you didn't before means patience. Then that means it'll eventually lead you to more love and more empathy. If you're going in that direction, you're on the right track, honey.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I understand. But worrying whether, not getting your tea on time and getting upset when the light is red instead of green, all the usual self-centered kind of stuff. If you get more patient with all of that, that's definitely progress.
I guess an example that recently came up for me is a week ago, my aunt died, and she was a really important person in my life. She had a lot of significance for me. And at one point in time, it would have been really difficult for me to have her die. And this time, and it's the first death that I've dealt with, close death, since I've been practicing. And it was very, very different than that. It was like, this is how it's meant to be. She had a good life. She was a good woman. I'm fortunate to have had her in my life. I wasn't sad at all. And then I wonder,
Okay, if you don't get the learning, this sadness can be because she's a marvelous person and you're just sad. The Dalai Lama, when he talked about his mum dying, there'll be tears, but he'd get over it quickly. So then if it's indifference like that, it could be indifference, but if you don't get the proper learning from it about impermanence and the real learning for yourself, Barbara, that'll be me. And if this event doesn't increase your wish to practice, then maybe you're becoming a bit indifferent. If you don't get the right learning from it, it's the way it's meant to be. It's not really the right way to say it. If she had a good life, that's even not meant to be the point. That's not the point. Had a good life meaning what? If she would practice morality and practice good ethics, then you can be happy for her. But if she didn't practice morality and didn't practice ethics and had a lot of attachment and didn't die well, you should be very sad, and you should learn from it and think, I better, continue to practice. So just thinking she had a good life and it's the way it's meant to be, that's not really Buddhist. That's not really the right approach. Do you understand a little bit?
I understand a little bit. Yeah, I'm going to need to sit with this.
Yes. Did she die well? Were you with her?
She did.
How do you know?
Yeah,
Did you say mantras in her ear, or you couldn't have said? You didn't feel like it was right to say that.
I did it silently.
Uh-huh.
It was very nice. I mean, I don't know what was going on in her mind. She was not responsive. So I can't know what was going on in her mind, but it seemed like it was a very peaceful day.
Okay.
And I guess I left it being just very grateful. Whereas at one point in my life, I would have been very sad.
I understand. So you've got to look at both of those. So the way you even said the words, this is an extra, it didn't seem to me you're quite on track with what would be the best interpretation. Like, it's not a question of just, she had a good life. Now it's meant to be that she's dead. That's a bit sort of nihilistic. It's a question of whether you have did she have a good life? Was she moral? Was she good? Was she kind? Did she die well? Did you help her die well? I mean, if you'd been brave enough, you could have whispered a mantra in her ear. It wouldn't have been a bad thing to do. And then you could have helped her connect with the Buddhas, and that would have helped to get her perfect human rebirth. So that's the way to think. And then the real learning is, though, Barbara, the real one is, that's all good. Even what you said, that'll be me. I better keep practicing. That's the biggest learning of all. Do you understand?
Yes,
Good.
I do.
That's
Thank you.
Good, Barbara. Thanks, darling. Who else is there, Mary? I'm just going to try and answer questions today.
Does anyone have a question for Venerable?
Yeah, I have a question again.
Yes, Ace, what's your question?
So recently I was reading the book of Dalai Lama.
Yes,
his
good.
book of The Art of Joy.
Wonderful.
And he said that by practicing tolerance and forgiveness towards people who have harmed us, so it's not a weakness, but a strength.
Right. What do you think about that?
So don't you think that when we practice patience and forgiveness, we let other people walk on us and will crush our value?
We've talked about this before, Ace, so obviously you haven't understood it from before, but let me talk about it again. If you see, it's not the practice of patience itself is not what causes us suffering. It's fear of upsetting people, fear of what they think of us. It comes down to the same thing, Ace. When we've got lots of attachment and want people to love us, and then it's like you're in a relationship, let's say, whatever kind of relationship it is, whether it's your father or a friend, and then they sort of become a bit of a bully, and then you're quiet. That's not patience. That's passivity, and that's fear, and that actually is internalized anger. So that's when you will get run over, but that's not patience. Patience is a very brave attitude that greets the problem, that is proactively involved and hears it and notices your own mind and decides you're not going to respond. That's a healthy type of attitude. But the usual passivity and fear that most of us think of as patience is not patience, it's weakness. And that's because we're craving to be loved by others, and we allow people to bully us because we're feeling like a victim, and we don't know how to become strong in ourselves. It's a completely different scenario, and we have to see the difference.
I understand. Thank you very much.
So forgiving a person is actually an incredibly courageous thing to do. But the Buddhist approach would be, there's a lot of work we have to do on ourselves first. I mean, if someone's harmed us, and people do harm us, this is the world. This is true, they harmed us. It's terrible that people harm us. But, it depends on what kind of view you have. If you're a Buddhist and you're trying to use the view of karma, which is a very powerful one for Buddhists, I mean, I always use that extreme example of those two young Tibetan nuns that I always talk about years ago in this conversation about their own suffering. They were talking with a whole bunch of prisoners in New York when the Dalai Lama was in New York. Richard Gere invited them all, and they were discussing all their suffering. They'd been imprisoned in Tibet and sexually abused and tortured. I mean, that's pretty intense, right? And so because they have the view of karma, which is a very different view, they knew why it happened in the past, so they were able to work with it. And they learned incredible They learn, they work so hard on their minds. And then at the end of the discussion, talking about their suffering, one of them said, and of course, we had compassion for our torturers because we knew that we must have harmed them in the past. And because we know they will suffer in the future. Now, that's the Buddhist approach. That's the Buddhist approach. That's a pretty tough one. But you first have to do the work on your own mind, and then it's easy to forgive another, because you realize why anybody harms anybody is because of their own attachment and their own anger and their own craziness, and that they're harming themselves. That's the real reason to have compassion for somebody. And then when you know that they're harming themselves, it's easy to forgive them. But you've got to go through that process in your own mind first. That's the Buddhist approach.
So true. Thank you very much, Robina. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Virginia's next, and then Beth.
Yes. Good, Virginia. Talk to me. Yes. Hello, sweetheart. You need to unmute, sweetheart. Press your little button. There you go. There you go, darling.
I've been in and out with the group this morning. I'm so sorry. But to get back to these mother issues, this is like a I have to get ready right now and take my mother to try to get her on hospice. She's a mess at her care home and causing problems and for herself and others. And I was just listening to Barbara talking about her aunt, and if my mother if she ever gets to the point of dying, and she's been on hospice before, so it's like it's just crazy with my
Virginia, you need to unmute.
I'm sorry, my daughter was calling.
If my mother's dying and I whisper, and she has this, she's not comfortable with Buddhism, and I whisper mantras in her ear, I'm afraid it will trigger her.
I understand. No, I understand. I know. I understand. You've got to be skillful, Virginia. I mean, it's up to you, you've got to be skillful. I mean, you've got to be skillful. I mean, your mother doesn't have to know, that it's religious. They don't know. She's probably never heard a mantra. And if you're sitting in the room and you're just singing nicely to yourself, Om Mani Padme Hum, you sing it nicely, she'll think it's a wonderful song.
That's right.
She won't say stop being religious. She wouldn't know.
Thank you.
So it's actually, it doesn't have to, the fact that you can be even singing it sweetly is will have a very powerful calming influence on her.
And on me.
That's the overt, and on you, baby. Yeah. That's the overt benefit. And then it's sort of like another method to help your mummy calm down. Your mummy's obviously she's a very volatile thing. She's your darling mummy, but you're being loving and kind and patient, are you?
What? I'm sorry, what was that?
Have you been loving and kind and patient with your mama?
No.
You're not being... What do you mean? You beat her up and yell at her?
Oh, no, I wish. I could. No.
You are being kind.
We argue. We argue with each other. We antagonize each other and get each other upset and argue and drama. A lot of with her family, it's drama.
So you can't control your mouth?
I'm working on it. I'm working on controlling my body and speech. Yes,
that's
and
right.
my mind.
That's the main one. Sweetheart, go walk out the room and hit the pillow and have a little shout, but at least control it with your mum, because she's got no control over her mind, and she's when the anger in us is dying for a fight, and that's what bickering is. So the anger in her, the irritation in her is wishing you'd say something. Don't give her that satisfaction. Okay. You just control your mouth and be kind and loving and give her a hug. Honestly, and you'll feel better about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Very powerful.
Thank you.
And just sing a mantra instead. She wouldn't even know.
Right.
Okay. Good, darling. What else, people? Who's up there? Beth, talk to me, sweetheart. Beth, unmute, sweetie. There you go.
Sorry, it's too nice to be inside. The opposite of wanting to receive love. Let me see if I'm doing this right.
Okay.
If we're always craving for something to come from me, so for example, the attachment, you want to be loved. You want to feel loved. with the opposite of that being, instead of thinking on I'm getting something, why don't I just show up and go and give somebody love because I'm experiencing that? Is that the right way of thinking?
Wanting someone to love me is the passivity and the pain and the hurt and the hopelessness that I'm not enough. And why doesn't someone give it to me? That's the hopelessness and that's the irony of ego, Beth. So to have to be proactive and think, what can I do to help? That's the way to be. That's more powerful. It's more satisfying. It's totally and completely different. And that's the perfect way to be. Yes. But it can also be dangerous because unless we know our mind well, because there are lots of people, their style is to always be mummy's little helper, but it's coming from a need to be seen as a good girl. So we've really got to unpack our mind. Ego is very tricky and very complicated. So we've got to see our minds really well, you know. But in general, yes, what can I do is incredible. There's no question. And the interesting point is, when it's coming from a genuine place, the satisfaction that comes from giving to others is deeper and more powerful and satisfying than the seeming satisfaction that comes from wanting someone else to love us, because dissatisfaction is craving someone to give me something, but no matter what we get, it's never enough. So it doesn't bring satisfaction at all. It just brings more dissatisfaction.
So I try to think of it as like taking advantage of being dyslexic and just looking at everything backwards, since all of my self-cherishing is all of my problems. So I'm like, if I just, hey, I'm just going to cherish other people. It's just, I just view it like being dyslexic is super helpful in Buddhism.
Well, I don't know all these labels. I can't stand all these Western labels, these Greek labels for these so-called illnesses we have. So you sound normal to me, Beth. Sound pretty good to me. Keep moving, babe. What else, people? Nothing else? I'm relying completely on you asking me questions this time. Cheryl's got something to say. Have you, Cheryl? No? Cheryl Katz. Press the right button, Cheryl. Press the unmute. There you go, there you go, there you go.
Hi. Actually, I have a lot to ask you about things going on in my own mind, but listening to everyone struggling, and I relate, I had a very difficult relationship with my mother, who left me when I was a child and blamed me for her miserable life before I was born.
Oh God, yes.
But anyway, I've been practicing, and practice has basically given me my life.
Yes, sir.
But I was thinking of the Four Limitless practice.
Yes.
And how I remember after going through shamatha and so forth. And then I did a program of the Four Limitless ones, and how it opened up a whole wellspring of compassionate power. It was powerful.
Amazing, Cheryl.
Well, but it's not me. It's the practice.
I know, but that turns into you, darling. The practice becomes you. It can't be separate. That's incredible. Well done. We should.
Well, so I'm not always able, but I have questions, but I don't think they're appropriate here.
Well, try one.
Like they're about Nundro. They're about Guru Yoga.
Whatever you'd like.
That's not be your own therapist.
It is. Yes, it is. You can ask right now.
It's a different place.
If you'd like to ask now, it's perfectly fine, Cheryl. It could be useful for others.
Ask you now or in an email?
Ask now if you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm getting myself very, very confused. I've been given permission to do 3 different Nundros, and I feel like I'm a bad person if I don't do my Nundro, because I haven't completed it. And I'm a very curious person. I always like to read, and I'm reading from this school and reading from that school, and I'm doing Mahamudra practice, and I'm doing I'm doing 7-line supplication, and I'm getting very confused, and I'm saying to myself, well, I can't decide for myself what I want to do. And I'm afraid to decide for myself, or jumping around from one thing to I did meet a guru who was Tinley Norbu Rinpoche.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in Boda and I heard his name before I ever met him,
mm-hmm.
it just was like a siren, and it just kept going and going.
Is he one of the
Finally, I met him, and I was around him, and the morning that I woke up after being with him, it was like my whole heart chakra was wide open. And
is he the person who's advising you at the moment? I mean, you say you got 3 different sets.
I don't have a person.
Right. So
advising me.
But you did say there are 3 different nundros, or someone's asked you to do them. So they're 3 different people.
Well, that gets a little complicated, because the launching Nundro was what I asked for after receiving empowerment to do the Kagyu Nundro. But I wanted, and I took vows with Sakyam Mipam Rinpoche, who now, the whole thing, this is the way it's been. I'm always in the middle, always in the bardo.
Yes.
Nothing's been clear. It's kind of been the way it is. And so I started the Kagyu Nundro.
Yes.
And then they said, no, stop the Kagyu Nundro. Now you want to do the Shambhala Nundro.
Okay.
And then the thing, and then...
which one do you like best, Cheryl? Which practice?
What do I like best? Well, this morning I was reading Kensei Rinpoche's The Wish-Fulfilling Jewel and the Heart Treasure of the Enlightened One.
Right, yeah.
And just reading it was like a practice. I was like, so, I'm sorry.
No, please. So which one do you, why don't you tell me, Cheryl, what practice you like best to do?
When
Cheryl, because you've got to decide. You've got to decide. These lamas are giving you advice.
I have to decide?
Yep, you do, darling. You've got such an intelligent mind.
Is the Enlightened One's a nundro?
What, sweetheart?
Is it a nundro?
What?
It's
No, darling, just listen to me. I think that's beautiful. That's wonderful. But just do, you decide, you work out from all these teachings you've received. You've got a big heart. Why don't you, hang on, I'm sneezing. Work out your morning practice, your afternoon, your evening, and you just do that and relax, and then read all these teachings, and don't try to be pleasing everybody all the time. You've got to please yourself, Cheryl. You've got to trust your own wisdom. You've got a lot of wisdom in there. So just make your own decision. Don't feel guilty. And then when you think of the guru,
I don't feel guilty. I just feel, I have a tendency to get distracted. And then when I come back to the teachings, and I have this doubt and fear that I'm using the teachings as a way to actually resist practice.
No, Cheryl, you're making it too complicated. You're better than I think you're far better than you think you are.
I'm just
your heart is completely immersed in the Dharma, Cheryl. That's all you think about day and night. That's absolutely amazing. Be content with it. Relax with it. Enjoy it. I mean, please, sweetheart, no need for guilt and fear. None of that. Unnecessary. Truly.
Even if I don't finish the nundro?
So what? So what? Who cares? Don't be ridiculous. Come on, relax. Just keep doing it. Your life is your nundro. Come on, one step at a time. It is beating yourself up. It's your own dissatisfaction, but there's no need for it, Cheryl. Your little heart is completely immersed in the Dharma. So all these people you read, all these lamas, you just see them all as a manifestation of the same Buddha, and you're trying to become that Buddha. Give yourself a break, mate, is what my suggestion is. You don't have to be confused. You're super intelligent. You're doing a great job, Cheryl. Relax.
Thank you.
All right, darling. That's my
Thank
advice.
you.
Good, pleasure. And why don't
I'll try.
Please, come on. And let's, because you remember, she mentioned the 4, she called them another word, but the 4 immeasurable thoughts. So why don't we just do that as a little contemplation, which is this amazing attitude of the Bodhisattvas. And we can do that. I'll just say the thoughts and you just contemplate the meaning. We finish with this. We'll take Cheryl's example. So we think how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free of attachment, anger, and ignorance. May they abide so. May they, what have I said? All sentient beings be free, abide in equanimity. May they abide so. And then the Bodhisattva's brave attitude, I will make this happen. And please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could be free of suffering and its causes. May they be free. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings could have happiness and its causes, especially the happiness of enlightenment. May they have them. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never parted from higher rebirths and liberation's excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I will make this happen. Please, Buddha, bless me to be able to do this. And like all of us, you know, with Cheryl is the same, all of us. Just one step at a time, one step at a time. Be delighted with our practice. Be delighted, one step at a time. Keep moving, never giving up. Keep moving and rejoice. Rejoice in what we're doing. Rejoice in our qualities. Rejoice in our effort. That's it, everybody. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for making that happen. That's wonderful. Keep moving, girl. Thank you, darlings, everybody. Thank you so much, sweethearts. Bye.
Thank you.